Hi Rachel, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So, my name is Jessica. I'm the occupational therapy student who'll be working with you today. And the purpose of this session is to start bringing awareness to your thought patterns that are not helpful for your recovery. And then we can begin working on relapse prevention strategies that will be helpful and that you can implement in your daily life. So, you'll have the opportunity to work on some counteracting statements when we read some identified thought patterns. And so, through doing this, you'll be able to learn and establish some new coping skills that you can use in your daily life, and that can help manage negative thoughts that may arise when you're home alone. So, the purpose of this specific worksheet is for you to eventually have the ability to manage your own thoughts with your own counter statements that you can come up with. All right, so just to give you an overview of what to expect during our session today, the time frame will take no more than 1 hour. And we're going to start with a small warm-up, which will lead us into the activity that we will complete together. And then we will share some of the thoughts that we identified. And then we'll move into a little processing discussion that will help us determine how you can utilize these thoughts in your daily life. And then we will summarize and then we will be finished, okay? All right, so one last thing before we get started. I just am going to review some of the expectations before we begin. So I just ask that you are respectful throughout the session, and that we will start and end at scheduled times, and all this information will remain confidential. Do you understand what confidential means? Okay, so that just means that anything you and I discuss here will stay between us and will not leave this room, okay? And then I just ask that there is no swearing.
Okay.
All right. How have you been doing with COVID and the riots and everything going on?
Good for the most part. I mean, they're not really affecting me because I'm so young, but I mean, I'm out of school, so that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
So, more free time to just hang out and chill and just do whatever I want to do.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get started. Today we're going to be doing a managing thoughts of using worksheet, and basically it's just so you can learn how to manage thoughts that come into your mind when you are struggling with your addiction, okay? Okay, so we're going to start with a small warm-up, and all I'm going to have you do is just say your name, and then you're going to say one positive coping strategy that you do or that you've done in the past that you can use to manage when you're feeling stressed or when you're struggling with a craving. Okay, so I'll start to show an example. So I'll say my name is Jessica, and one positive coping strategy that I do or have done in the past is exercise.
Okay, so my name is Rachel, and something I do is listen to music.
Okay, that's good. That's good coping. So I printed out 2 worksheets so we can do this together. So if you have any questions while we're going along, just don't hesitate to ask. So we're just going to start by writing our name at the top of the worksheet. Okay, and just to show, this is the worksheet that she'll be filling out. So what we're going to do is come up with counter statements for each one of the thoughts that you read, okay? So I'm going to provide you with 3 different sentences, and you can pick one that you think would be most suitable to counteract with one of these negative thoughts, okay? So do you want to read the first statement that you see?
I'll never use again. I've got my problem under control.
We have these thoughts listed on this sheet of paper that sometimes go through someone's mind when they have an addiction. And on the other side of it, we have a blank counteracting statement. So basically what I'm just going to do is go through some counter statements that might be useful to say to yourself when you're experiencing these negative thoughts. Okay, so in your cocaine addiction, let's do the first one together. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually wrote these out for you, but I'm going to read them out loud just so you can see them as well.
Okay.
You want to read the first one again so we can have an idea?
Yeah. I'll never use again. I've got my problem under control.
Okay, so I'm going to read you 3 different statements that you might be able to use, and just let me know which one you think would be the best option. So number 1 is, this is true. I will never use again. And if I do, it means I'm a failure. Number 2, I doubt this is true. I know at any given moment I'm going to blow it. Or 3, I know that relapse is part of recovery. If I do slip up, I know it will be okay and I will be able to get back on track.
1.
1, okay, so this is true, I will never use again, and if I do, it means I'm a failure?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's okay to feel like that's what you would say to yourself, but actually, we know that relapse is part of recovery, and you can kind of just say to yourself, if when you're having a thought that like says I'm never going to use again, just say to yourself, relapse is okay. So if you do slip up, you can recover from it and it's not going to be the end of the world. All right, so do you want to try the next one?
Sure.
Okay, do you want to read it out loud?
Sure. A few cigarettes, drinks, lines of cocaine won't hurt.
Okay. Do the same thing as you did in the first one, and I'm going to read you 3 different statements that you can choose the best one that you think would be most beneficial to say. So, having or using cocaine will be fine. I've been in recovery long enough. That's number 1. Number 2 is I know that using cocaine may make it more difficult to fight my urge to use. Therefore, I am going to refrain from using this just for today. Or number 3, I know that I can handle it. It's only one time.
3. It's my drug of choice.
Okay. So, what makes you think that you would only be able to do it one time?
I know my limits.
Okay.
I know how much I can handle,
On one
and
hand, you say that you know your limits, but on the other hand, you're here in treatment. So what do you make of that?
well, I'm not here because I want to be. I'm here because I'm forced to be.
Right. But I guess my point is like you're still coming, so you're showing up and you potentially do have the option to not come. So it kind of does sound like you might want to make a change.
I mean, right now I'm just here because I need to be.
Okay. Do you want to try the 3rd statement and see if you can come up with a counter statement for that?
Sure. I can't have fun or excitement if I don't use.
Okay, so same thing like we did the last 2. I'm going to read you 3 different statements and I'm going to have you choose the best answer. Okay, so my life is going to be so boring now. I might as well just get high whenever I want to have a good time. That's 1. Number 2, my life became unmanageable when I was using drugs. I know that abstaining from using drugs, in your case cocaine, will lead to a more fulfilling life. Or 3, I'll just have to get used to being bored all the time.
I know drugs are bad, but my life is just going to be so boring. So, I mean, I don't want to get used to being bored all the time, so I guess I'll just get high. So 1.
Number 1? Okay. So that's understandable that you think that your life would be boring after using cocaine and doing activities while only being high. But I think the best option here would be that acknowledging that your life has become unmanageable when you were using cocaine, and it might be beneficial to understand that abstaining from use of that will lead to a more fulfilling life because you won't have to come to these sessions anymore and you'll be able to do things that you actually enjoy that you could do not high.
We'll see.
Okay, so like we've been doing for the other ones, we're just going to start with the one that we left off with. So if you don't mind reading the scenario, and then we can work to come up with a statement.
Life is difficult. I need to escape for a while.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to read 3 statements, and then you can go ahead and decide which one you think would be the best one to say. So number 1 is, I'm just going to do this one last time because this is too much for me to handle at the moment. You can follow along if you'd like to. Number 2 is, there is no other way to cope with what I'm dealing with other than, in your scenario, using cocaine. Number 3, I know this feeling will pass. I am going to do something healthy to distract myself for the time being.
Three, I know this feeling will pass. I'm going to do something healthy to distract myself for the time being.
Okay, so what about that statement? That's correct. What about this statement made you choose this?
Because I know that the feeling will pass and that there are other alternatives I could use to help myself feel better.
Good. That's great. So, do you want to move on to the next one?
I can't fit in with others if I don't. I can't fit in with others if they don't use and. Oh gosh, I can't read today.
It's okay.
I can't fit in with others if they use and I don't.
Good. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing and read the 3 different scenarios that you can choose the best option from. Number 1 is I'll never be able to hang out with friends now that I stopped using. I'm just going to have to get used to being alone. Number 2 is if the people I hang out with can't respect that I am not using, maybe it's time to reevaluate who I am hanging around with. Number 3 says I'll just have to continue using in order for my friends to accept me. Is there a specific statement that you think would be best to counteract that statement with?
Number 1, I'll never be able to hang out with friends now that I stopped using. I'm just going to have to get used to being alone.
Okay. So, what about this statement made you choose that?
Well, because if I do stop using, then I won't have any friends, which means then I'll be alone.
Okay. So, this is actually the incorrect option, but I'm going to review number 2 with you, and if you want to read this out loud, and then we can discuss why this might be the better option.
If the people I hang out with can't respect that I'm not using, maybe it's time to reevaluate who I'm hanging around with.
Okay, do you understand why this might be the better option? If not, it's okay. I'm going to talk it over with you.
Okay.
Okay, so sometimes the people that we hang out with can be triggering, and therefore we need to find new friends and new people to hang around with if they just don't understand that what we're choosing to do with our life might be different than their choices, and that's completely okay. So if your friends don't understand that you are no longer wanting to use, it might be time to consider evaluating who you're hanging around with and maybe look for some new friends that will be healthier to spend your time with.
Makes sense. Then I won't be so lonely.
Right. Good. All right. Do you want to go ahead and read the next statement? So we're on.
What's the point in staying sober? It really doesn't matter.
All right. So for this one, I've decided that you're doing a great job. So I think that we can not read my statements here and we can try to collaborate and come up with a statement that you can use. So I think one of the first things that we could do together is to identify 3 positive things that will come about when you are staying sober.
One, I'd be healthier. My family would like me more. And a third one, I'd probably make better decisions.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad you were able to come up with 3 positive things that will come about when you are staying sober. So maybe a counteracting statement would be, do you want to read the statement again one more time?
What's the point in staying sober? It really doesn't matter.
Okay, so maybe a statement that you could say to yourself would be, it does matter if I stay sober because I have friends and family who care about me, and I also care about my own well-being. Does that sound like something that you could say to yourself?
Maybe in time.
Good. All right, you're doing a great job. So let's move on to number 8.
I'm going to test myself to see if I can have just one.
Okay. So we're going to do the same thing because you're doing a really great job with coming up with your own statement. So I think one of the first things to do with this statement would be to maybe come up with 3 negative reasons why it would be harmful to do just one time.
I'd make really bad decisions. probably be hanging out with the wrong crowd again. And I guess I'd lose my family since they told me if I used again, then I'd be out.
Okay, I think it's really great that you can identify that you are not hanging out with the most positive people. Come up with a statement to counteract that with.
If I have just one, I could lose everything, my friends, my family, mostly my family.
That's a really good thing to say to yourself. Do you think that would be something that you could say when you're not in the session, like when you're on your own?
Yeah, maybe. Sometimes. Depends on the day.
Okay, so you're doing a really good job. I'm glad you're participating. How about we move on to the next statement? Do you want to read that one out loud?
How can I go out with John if I don't use cocaine?
Okay, so that was good. I think that one of the first things to identify would be that let's see how John is. If he's somebody that you really trust and you think that he would accept who you are without using, I think that you would be able to go out with him without using cocaine. But if John is someone that is triggering to you and you don't feel like safe around him, then I think it might be time to evaluate maybe finding some new friends to hang out with. But a counter statement towards us, can you think of something that might be helpful?
No.
All right, so
Because I can't. I usually go out like with my friends when I am high. So, yeah. So like I just always use or I'm high like when I go to hang out with my friends. Unless like I obviously don't have anything, then I will go and hang out with them. A lot of the times. I will like use alone like at home unless I don't have anything, and then I'll hit up my friends, but it's usually like when I'm kind of feeling low and sad and unhappy, and I don't go to like hang out with them because like I like them. I just go to kind of use them because I know that they have stuff. So
all right, so it kind of sounds like you've been struggling with this for a while, and maybe are you just not sure of how you're to cope with your emotions?
I guess, I mean, no one likes to feel their emotions. No one likes to cry. I mean, I guess it's more acceptable to be mad and like punch something, but no one likes to feel or express. I mean, most of the time I'm always told that like I shouldn't be expressing myself, so I don't.
So maybe it kind of sounds like you're self-medicating and you're kind of just like blocking these emotions that are actually really normal to feel. So especially in a time of a pandemic, it's very normal to feel overwhelmed and scared and stressed and unsure of what to do. And I'm sure you're unable to engage in some activities because of the restrictions that are going on with your friends. So I think what would be helpful would be to identify some other strategies that you can use instead of cocaine to cope with how you're feeling.
Yeah, it's not that easy though. It just gives you that like instant, gratification. It gives you that instant, like everything's better. So it's hard to not do that when you feel so low.
It's very understandable. All right, I really appreciate you opening up and talking about that with me. We're almost done, so you're doing a great job. Just hang in there. Do you want to go ahead and read the next statement?
I'll never be able to get a job if I continue to use cocaine, so I might as well just continue to use.
Okay. what are some statements that come to your mind when you read this? It's okay if they are negative. So what are some things that come to your mind?
This one, I want a job. I don't want to be home. Like, I want to get out. I don't even want to wait until I'm 16 to get a job. I don't want to be home. So, I mean, would they even really know if I was using cocaine?
Well, they would, because you probably would have to do a drug test. So that might be a motivating factor for you if you are really looking to feel more independent and work. Maybe that could motivate you to stop your cocaine use, because most areas will require a drug test.
What if I just used a little less?
A little less. I think that in your scenario, just refraining from using, period, would be more beneficial, because I think we discussed earlier that it's a lot harder to stop at just one. And I know you mentioned that your friends and your family are really important to you, and also your health is very important. So I think being able to stop the use altogether through the relapse prevention strategies that we're talking about today and that we will in future sessions will be helpful in managing that.
You're probably right. We'll see.
Okay. So we just have one more statement to discuss. Do you want to read this one out loud?
I could use and no one would ever know.
Okay, so what are some thoughts that come to your mind when you read this statement?
It's true.
It's true. What makes you think that it's true?
I did. I used and no one ever knew.
Do you think that if no one ever knew that you would be in this situation?
Well, if people didn't snoop around my stuff, then I would never be in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I got some nosy people in my life, so.
Mm-hmm. It's understandable. Sometimes the people who care about us can really invade our privacy, and I can understand.
Telling me.
Mm-hmm. And I can understand how that would be frustrating.
Yeah.
Can you think of some things that you could say to yourself after reading that?
No, that one's a struggle because, like I said, it's happened. I've done it many times until people decide to be nosy. So you could use and no one would know.
Do you think, going back to the last statement, do you think that you would be able to work while you're high? You think?
Oh, I'm sure it's easy. I'm sure it's something that I wouldn't be the first one trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's tons of people out there that do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe this is something that we could explore more when you are actually actively looking for a job and filling out applications. This could be something that we'll keep in mind and that we can evaluate at that time. All right. So I just want to say that you did a really great job filling out this worksheet with me. And you are more than welcome to take this home with you so you can reflect back on it and maybe use some of these strategies yourself when you're experiencing some of these thought patterns. Is that something that you think that you could do?
Yeah, I'll try. I'll try to use them.
Okay. Okay, so now I'm just going to have you reflect back on the worksheet, and we're going to choose one thought that you think might be an actual thought that you might experience on a day-to-day basis. Then I'm going to have you choose a counter statement for that specific thought that you think you actually might be able to implement.
Okay. Probably the last one, taking the edge off
Okay.
to help me relax.
So you think you'll be able to use which statement? You think you'll be able to go and listen to music?
Yeah, it's something I could definitely try.
Good. Okay. Did you find that it was difficult to identify which statement to choose?
I know I didn't pick the ones that you wanted me to choose. Just trying to be honest and...
No, that's good. So the first step in getting help is acknowledging that there is work that needs to be done. So I think you're on the right track. I'm just going to move on to asking you some questions about how you've kind of felt about this worksheet. How did you feel when you heard some of the suggested counter statements?
I could relate to all of them, sucked, I guess, because I don't think that there's an issue, but maybe there is.
So that's good that these statements made you get a different perspective as to what's going on. Okay, so how can you use some of these counteracting statements that we identified today when you're experiencing negative thoughts on your own?
I don't know. I think probably just bringing it back to just doing something else.
Doing something else, like?
Anything. Just not cocaine.
That's great. So you mean like a leisure activity or something, like for the music? Like music or... Good. What have you learned about yourself when you're trying to deal with negative thoughts when you're on your own?
Music. Or probably reach out to someone else that's not someone who has a cocaine addiction like me.
That would be beneficial and helpful. So based on today's session, what changes do you think that you can make in your recovery? Like, for example, when you're thinking of a negative thought, do you think that you could use these counteracting statements in your life?
Yeah, I guess I just need to think more clearly and not be so impulsive and just do what I wanted to do. Something that will make me feel good in the moment rather than thinking long term and doing something that doesn't revolve around drugs.
Good. Great. So you did a really good job today identifying certain statements that could challenge your negative thoughts. I'm just going to summarize like what we went over. We just kind of talked about different statements that you could say to yourself when you're experiencing challenging thoughts and negative thought patterns that could potentially lead to using. And we know that being able to emotionally regulate ourselves will help us prevent a relapse. But we also know that relapse can happen and it's okay, and it doesn't mean that you're a failure.
You look at me sometimes.
Okay, so sometimes when you're faced with thoughts and emotions, such as the ones identified in this exercise, you can be faced with uncertainty and vulnerability, which might make you more prone to relapse. You learn that through identifying maladaptive thought patterns that you can respond and react in a positive manner, which can help you reduce the risk of relapse. And so sometimes these thoughts can just come on randomly without notice, and you might be unsure as how you will manage, which is why it's important to be prepared with some of the statements like we came up with today. Through self-awareness, you'll be able to understand specific thoughts that are not supportive for your recovery, and you'll be better prepared for when these thoughts do arise. I really appreciate you participating in this activity and being a really good sport about it. I think you did a great job, and I look forward to seeing you at our next session.
Thanks. See you then.